So, good morning. I will give a more general overview of what is the career in cardiologist. And so I think it's important to define what we want it to be. So I will give a very short definition of what is the academic cardiologist and what are the possibilities that we have inside of this career. What are the difficulties? What are the potential solutions? And how the system, the academic system works in Italy. So physician scientist is a person, is a people that provide direct patient care and conduct research. He should have the responsibility for overseeing the research, for publishing results, for writing the grant, for obtaining funding. And however, they are expected to give lecture, to give education to medical students. But in the same time, they have clinical duties. So I recognize myself during my career in this figure, in this role. So I am from Italy. I am appointed as an associate professor after confirmation, and my track was a little bit similar to what Gemma did in the past. So I did my PhD, my MD in Italy, my last part of PhD in US. Then I got a position, academic position in US as a research scientist and assistant professor. Then I went back in Italy, and in Italy I became a clinician, but in the same time I handle laboratory research, basic research laboratory and clinical duty, which is the most difficult things for a clinician. So we need to become a little bit schizophrenic people, because we need to switch continuously between basic and clinic, and then clinic to basic in the same day. Scientists, researcher dedicate 100% of the effort to the research. They don't have clinical duty, so they are a little bit less schizophrenic people. However, their responsibility for research are similar than the previous figure that I showed you before. Clinician educator. What is the clinician educator? Is a people that dedicate a significant amount of time to educational activity. He has clinical duties. And clinician educator administrator, in addition to the role of clinician educator, they have administrative role. So this is the hub of a career in cardiology. So he's a program director, director of clinical cardiology, is a medical school director. So he has a lot of responsibilities. And the pure clinician dedicate 100% of the effort to provide direct patient care. Now, these are the main reason because why we are choosing an academic career in cardiology. So most of the people wanted to be in an academic environment. They wanted to teach. They like new idea. They like to be exposed to new idea, to diversity. And they decide to do research. Now, what are the difficulties of a career in cardiology? So the difficulties are many, and they are specific for each categories. So first of all, for the physician scientist and scientist researcher, there are difficulties in acquiring, maintaining, and demonstrating skills, because they very often fall behind in research skill and miss new technology due to years spent in residency and in clinical portion of fellowship, so in education. They also have disadvantages when they compete for grant with the PhD, very well established PhD. For a clinician educator and for a clinician educator administrator, there is lack of on-site mentoring and training, lack access to professional educational program. And for pure clinician, the healthcare system demands more clinical time while reducing research support. Lack of protected research time create major challenges for publication and for grant. And also there is a difficulties to get grants. So flow of money is always difficult, especially in the biomedical area, because budget for biomedical research are tight and may remain so for several years. And these are top reasons for grant failure that have been discussed in a very, very complete way by Professor Pearson, so I will not focus on that. So what are the potential solutions for improving, for getting in an academic career in cardiology? Improving fellowship training. So faculty must better prepare fellows to succeed in the career. And this preparation includes how to write grant proposal, proficiency in specialized research skills. Developing novel partnership can help to provide stability during early career, and also seeking policy change. So faculty must better educate the public, the representative, the regulatory official regarding the clinical importance of a medical education and research. So, of course, the training opportunity for all of you are very well known. MD, PhD program are one obvious approach to train young investigator, and MD degree followed by a research fellowship may be an option. So this is how the career system is working in Italy. We have a 3 level in academic cardiology, assistant professor, associate professor, and full professor. All cardiologists are entitled to apply for an assistant professorship. However, PhD title is highly recommended. Appointment to cardiology posts require now the national scientific habilitation, which is not long-lasting, as a short duration, 5 years. So you have to renew the national habilitation every 5 years, and you have to demonstrate to be updated in the research, as well as in the education, as well as in the clinical. So committee members are recruited from all over the country and include a full professor of the university with vacant position, and once an academic appointment is made in Italy, official confirmation is given after 3 years, and I am in this step. Unfortunately, positions last a lifetime, so in Italy, regardless the scientific productivity. So when a people become established, theoretically, he doesn't have the duty to demonstrate again what he is. Of course, in front of the administration, but not in front of the scientific community. So this is my presentation, and I am open to all the questions about my personal career.
Yeah, Rosalinda, thank you very much for these insights from the clinician point of view. Are there questions from you? Yes.
Thank you very much for the nice presentation. As far as I understood, you are doing clinics also. I have a question. I'm an MD, but I found out that I like also basic science. Do you think that on a long term, there's a possibility to do both and reach a good level? Or you would rather advise a medical doctor who likes to do also basic science to choose between them? Just one.
Okay.
Thank you.
So my personal experience was to get the MD first, then the PhD, then the clinical fellowship in cardiology. Most of the people in Italy do MD, maybe some of them does PhD, but most of them after MD does clinical fellowship directly and then PhD. In my opinion, what my supervisor suggested me is to do the first type of track, MD, PhD, and then clinical fellowship in cardiology, because you always have time to spend in clinical. But when you are young, your mind works better in the research. and then you can go in the clinical. This is my personal opinion. So MD, of course, you have to do PhD after MD, because this is a very good opportunity to learn and to be in contact with the academic world. And then if you wanted to have a contact with the patients, yes, you have to do the clinical fellowship. And for a medical doctor, it's important to keep contact with the patients, because our stimuli comes either from basic research but also from the patients. In this way, your idea will develop, will have a more development in terms of translational. So you understand, you very well understand what you need in your research. And most of you answer to the question that you aimed to find new therapeutics strategies. This is right. Not only mechanism, not only pathophysiology of the disease, but finally what the patients need really. And this track, MD, PhD, and clinical fellowship in a specific topic, in a specific area of the medical science, is the best way to give you this mind.
So there's another question here from the back.
Thank you. I had indeed two questions regarding the timing. The first one is the one that you just answered now regarding the sequence between MD, PhD, and then clinical fellowship. But then I jump to the second one. As soon as you have either build up your clinical career and your research career, how do you manage to split, I will say, in the calendar? Would you advise to do 1 week for each other, to split the weeks, to do 1 month? How do you manage the duties for each of the both career that you have to manage at the same time?
There is no defined time for basic and for clinical, unfortunately. In your own day, you have to do both. You have to think to patients as well as to your mice, as well as to your in vitro experiment. Otherwise, you lose time, you lose possibility to go ahead. And then your mind keep elastic in this two type of area that you have to manage for all the life. So there is no really a sectorial division between the time spent in the basic research, the time spent with patients. And afterwards, you will this will become natural. This will become your natural day. So. And the research, mostly the research will become your drug for going to the clinic. So this is what happens to me.
So this seems to be, yeah?
Can I just say, in the UK it doesn't work like that. You can actually segregate the careers, and you get protected research time as a clinician, and you can structure it the way you want to, as long as you still manage to do your clinical duties. So with regard to the question at the back, there are some academic cardiologists in the UK who spend maybe 2 months of their year doing solid clinical just being clinicians and not doing any research, and then they spend maybe 4 days a week for 6 months doing research and 1 day as a clinician. So you can actually structure it. You have to have you have to talk to the right people, you have to make sure the hospital's happy with it and so on, but it can be done. And I think ultimately the ability to do that is helpful, rather than, sadly, as you have to, which is balance everything at once, which is much harder. So the system has become a little bit better, I think, in the UK. It's still hard to do, and we still find it very hard to recruit and progress academic clinicians, particularly in cardiology.
Sorry if I debate a little bit, but of course in UK this is how the system works, but also it's similar in Italy. So the education time is very, very protected. So when we do MD, we don't do research. When we do PhD, we don't do clinical. But afterward, after the end, you have to manage both of the area, both of the thing. And so this is my message.
So this
in
is
the education, it's very important to be focused on one single area, one single things that you are doing. But after you get your tools, you have to use them, you have to switch them from one to another one.
Yes, of course.
I think that it's important also to rely on your colleagues on both sides and to be able to delegate. to be trustful of your colleagues. When you are not there, they will do a good job in the lab and in the world.
Of course, the collaboration are very important, and when a PI is established, actually is established because of also its collaborator in around the world and in the department, in the research institute. So a research program today is very difficult to handle because is always more specific in a certain area. So I am not able to run proteomics, I am not able to run microRNA, but I have an idea. So I am very fortunate to meet people that like my idea and help me to do my idea, to realize my idea. So collaboration are very important in order to terminate, to make a project.
Yeah, no, also relate to Jeremy, because we are an international or different European countries. In the Netherlands, I think the most difficult part is when people are in their special, their MD. So they finish a beautiful PhD, during which they do some clinical work as well, often. But then the period during training is really hard. So that's where we try to get a better system, and I think the UK is a very good example, where they have more support, and also that's the time when most of the young people start a family, so it's super challenging. But once you are a cardiologist and you want to do basic science, or you're much more flexible if you want it. And it's in the Netherlands it's the same. We find it difficult to find clinicians who actually want to stay in academia. So I very much support the 6 clinicians who are here. Please stay. And because it's very important for us basic scientists to know what we have to study in our labs also, in collaboration with you.
Thank you very much. Obviously, there are more questions from the 6 clinicians, so I will hand over the microphone.
Thank you. This is I needed this presentation, for sure. So thank you.
Sorry, you what?
I needed this presentation.
Thank you very much. Really, I appreciate your feedback. Yeah. It's very important for me.
I am an MD, and now I'm on a PhD. And I wanted to ask you, how many years did you do your PhD program? Because I am afraid not to spend too many years. I want to finish in 3 years, but I heard it is quite hard.
Yeah.
And I am afraid, and I miss clinics.
Yeah, in Italy we are a little bit likely instead of US, where you cannot finish your PhD if you don't get good results. In Italy, you have to have your own project. You have to develop the project with the help of the mentor. However, at a certain point, after 3 years, your research project will be ended. If you wanted to continue the research project, yes, you can apply for training, for postdoc training. So in Italy, the duration of the PhD is 3 years, and I spent the last year in the US. You can you can apply for a European PhD program, which is possible and which require at least 6 months permanence in a different country than Italy in Europe. And unfortunately, there is no title recognized in Italy that are US title PhD. So if you wanted to get a PhD in US, you have to stay in US because the program are very different. But you can get an European PhD in Italy because the program are similar, so have been considered similar. And but you have to spend at least 6 months in a external country. So in my experience was a short-term PhD. After PhD, you actually did not complete your preparation. Of course, you have to continue doing clinical fellowship or travel grant or borse in Italy, grant, short-term grant. So there are several possibilities in Italy to complete your preparation, your education as a scientist, as a researcher. But the most important thing in my experience was to go in US for 5 years. So I was exposed to a lot of diversity, and I actually did the full immersion in the basic research in the US. So it was a very protected time for me for getting an acceptable research background.
So, okay, then thank you very much for this presentation. I think we should move on.